welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to Lux Places tonight to engage with author Kathy Kapps. So I'm Deborah Elise, if I haven't met you before, and I'm an agent here at Lux, and I focus my business with intention of working with clients where I'm with the architectural design of a home and finding out about why their needs, and I'm more personal in the way that I work, whether you prefer a garden aesthetic or interior. So that is the pleasure that I have right now with my business, and I incorporate my 20 years of art consulting along with my real estate business. So I'm really pleased that you're all here tonight.
And I want to thank all of you for coming, and those of you that bought my book or are interested in my book, I really want to thank you for that. It was a long time coming, this book. It took me about 20 years to write it, but we're here, and I want to thank you all. Thank you, Deborah, for being the host.
You're so
and
welcome. Steve,
our videographer.
Yes.
He and I have worked together on many projects before, so I'm really happy that he's here with me now. For
I've
this.
known Kat and Bennett for 30 years and attended your wedding. The Inner Mandala, your book, it weaves together your personal journey, the Nepalese lineage, healing, and the inner transformation. What inspired you to write the book?
Well, first of all, I feel all of us have a book in us, or maybe 2 or 3, especially growing up in Sausalito. But I really feel we all have one, and my book had all the components that one needs to tell a story. I had a tragedy, I had triumph, I had adventures, historical facts, magic, and unique. It was unique. I have hundreds of books on climbing mountains, especially Everest, and there's hardly any books of people trekking in the Himalayas. Maybe a couple, and I remember years ago, 22 years ago, when I first went to base camp, I bought a book, The Trek to Everest, thinking, oh great, this will give me an idea what I'm in for. A few photos, and when I went there, the photos I saw had nothing to do with what the reality was. And I thought, that's strange, just a few photos really doesn't give you a complete picture. I've been to base camp 8 times, and so, oh, thank you. Somebody that knows. And so I felt my book would be a great guide for people that are interested in trekking in the Himalayas. And like I said, it just was a great story to share, because it ended up being a healing for me. And with the loss that I suffered, I ended up gaining so much more. I would have gone through the loss all over again. So that's why I wrote it. It was just inspirational for me, and I figured maybe some others would be inspired too.
So Kat, you've been to Nepal now 20 times. That's amazing. Starting back in 1980. When were you first interested in Nepal?
Well, I first heard of Nepal when I was 27, and my roommate's friend came over, and he just came back from Nepal. Honestly, I never even heard of the place. And I was into mountains. I was backpacking in the Sierras, and I came from Colorado and the Rocky Mountains and all that. And when he mentioned Nepal, I had the strangest out-of-body experience, like a past lifetime. Like I lived there, and I was supposed to go there. And by the time I was 30, I was living there. I bought a one-way ticket, took my dog, and there I was. The first time I went, though, I wanted to, since I didn't know Nepal, I wanted to be safe, you might say. So I went with the American women climbers that climbed Delegary. The first American women climbers, led by Arlene Blum, was in 1978. And that really inspired me. So 2 years later, or a year later, the second group of American women climbers were doing Dalagiri, which was the 7th highest mountain. So I decided I would go with them. I'm not a climber, but I went on the support group, and I did go to base camp. So that was my first introduction to Nepal. And then 3 months later, I was living there. So
Wow.
it was one of those things.
Mm.
Yeah.
Your book format is in 2 separate parts. Why is that?
Well, part 1, I wrote, so I went the first time to base camp in 2004, and something happened at that time that was a tragedy for both my husband and I. Only he handles emotional things better than I do. So the next year I went to just have a healing, maybe find out the reason why it happened, and I had a miracle that happened that I came back and I wrote part 1. And I thought that was it. And it was sort of like an essay. And I passed it around to a few of my friends and my family, not knowing that I was ever going to go back. And then about 1.5 years later, I ended up going back. I was asked, a friend asked if I would go back with her, and I had told her I always get sick at high altitude. I'm not very good at it. But she climbed Kilimanjaro so many times, I thought, well, if I went with her, maybe I could learn see what my potential is if I went with somebody that really knew about high altitude. And I did fine, and that was 2007, and then I started going every year afterwards. And that was part 2.
Well, you mentioned just a little bit about this, what had happened, but your book actually begins the first time you went to Everest and base camp in 2004.
Right.
To celebrate your shiatsu celebration,
20th year
your 20th year anniversary, only to come home to the tragedy. And that was actually the same day that you were celebrating that you made it to base camp.
Right. I came home after this wonderful trip, celebrating at base camp, my 20th year anniversary at that time. I'm now on 42, doing shiatsu. And I came home and found out that while I was gone, my precious little dog was tragically killed. And it just shattered me. And then a few hours later, my friend here sent me an email and told me the day it happened, and it ended up being the day I was celebrating my anniversary. And at that moment, and I was still in a lot of pain, which continued on, but at that moment, even in that pain, I knew God was not punishing me, because for 20 years doing my work, it was all about love and helping people. And I couldn't imagine that I would be at such a place celebrating, at the same time being so high and having something so low. I knew there was a reason.
What made you feel that there was a reason for this to happen somehow versus just some of us things happen they just happen, but your understanding is quite different.
It goes back to my belief in destiny. And I think, people judge things as good or bad, positive or negative, but I think there are things that are already written, and they're given, and it's what you make of it. So when I went back, I just went back to do a memorial. I really didn't know if I'd find the reason, and at that time I did, actually. I ended up finding the person that had my dog Annapurna from years ago when I lived in Nepal, who I never could find before. Out of 27 million people, I magically found him. And I really thought that was the reason, that I had to go back, is to not only have lost my dog when I was at base camp, but years earlier in the 80s, leaving my dog behind, thinking I was going to bring her home with me when I got kicked out of the country because you're not supposed to go live there. And I found out she had a great life of 12 years. So I really thought, well, that's the reason, just to feel in my heart that my dogs had a good life. but that wasn't the reason.
There's another reason.
There's a whole part two
So-
that explains the reason.
So what was the part of the story that was the hardest to tell, and what helped you move through the resistance?
Well, what's hardest to tell is putting your emotions, your pain in a book for people to read. I'm the type that I feel shy posting on Facebook. I'm more of a one-on-one person than a group person as far as that. So the hardest part was actually talking about my pain, but it was so magical what happened to me, finding the person that had my other dog, that it was unbelievable to me. It just had to be told, so, yeah.
So, and did writing the Inner Mandala change you in ways that you didn't expect? Did it change you in ways?
Well, it's, they talk about people, when you go through things, it's a good idea to journal. And I was really never one to do that. But I did find that whether you write a book or you journal your emotions and pains, sometimes when you put it down on paper, you sort of make sense of it, or you let it go, you release it, It's part of your story. Instead of holding it in and feeling this victim, why it happened to me, poor me. So I think writing a book, at the beginning, like I said, the part one was just for my friends and family, it was a little essay, but part two was just so amazing with everything I went through that it became a great story.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Your book shows how intertwined you are with a few of the Sherpa families there in the Khumbu region. Who are they as people?
Well, the Sherpas are the indigenous Himalayan people that migrated from Tibet like 4 centuries ago. And they have this incredible ability to adapt to high altitude, live in high altitude. It's something in their blood, and they have a certain gene. So they built resilient communities up in the Solo Khumbu region where Everest is. And they're also great mountaineers. Their skills in mountaineering is unparalleled to anybody else. And they're rooted in Tibetan Buddhism. And they're known for their hospitality. You always see a Sherpa smiling or welcoming you in. And they've been great guides and partners for the Himalayan expeditions. All the foreigners that climb Everest, they can't do it without the Sherpas. They can't make the route, they can't carry the loads. So they're a very resilient, hardy people, but like I said, they're basically the keepers of the mountain.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
They're
it
wonderful
is.
people. There's about 3 very popular regions in Nepal, in the Himalayas. The Annapurna region, it's not such high altitude. Everest region, high altitude. Langtang, that was a popular place that a lot of trekkers went to. And there are many, many other areas like Manslu, Makalu you went to. So there are different areas in Nepal that people are privileged to go to instead of just the popular places, which I haven't gone to. 2 seasons of trekking, and it gets pretty crowded. So, but with me, because I was there so many times, I just knew the patterns of trekkers, when they leave, and where they go and how long they trek for. And so I would go at different times, so I never really had to deal with that. But yeah, there are a lot of trekkers now, and when I first went in 2004 up to the Everest region, there are places you could barely get a room because they just didn't have that many lodges or tea houses. Like the first time we went, we were sleeping in a dormitory, with 8 other people in the bed with us, and then 8 on top of us, which was not my style at all.
I don't think it was Bennett's style either. You're a trooper. When I heard
Especially
that,
considering who we had sleep next to.
and it wasn't you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was a man that he looked exactly like Bennett's father who had died. He had to sleep next to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked really exactly like him.
Yeah,
I woke up going, ah!
That's interesting. Your website, Lady Everest, talks about planning treks for others without going there. How does that work out for them?
Well, because trekkers don't have to die up in the Everest region, or they don't have to be transported by helicopter because there's no vehicles up there. It's either you're on a donkey's back, a porter's back, or a helicopter if you have to get out of there. And when I would go there so often, I would see people that really didn't know about high altitude. And I could tell just by the look in their face that they had it. And I would try to convince them to go lower or stay put for another day. And I helped many, many people. So my website was basically born out of that, wanting to educate people about high altitude trekking and what to do and what the rules are and little tips to make it a little easier for you or more comfortable, and help plan their trek, get them their guide, give them the information they need, arrange the itinerary, and not for me to go with them, I'm just not that way, but just to make it so that I knew they were safe with the guide that I chose. And some friends in the audience have done that, and had a very magical trip just by going with somebody that I knew and trusted that could take care of any little detail. So I did that just as a hobby because I enjoyed it so much. But I also saw many people put themselves in jeopardy. In fact, Cassette and I, in the 80s, we were on our way to Everest. We never did go. We didn't know anything about high altitude. And I'm sure we wouldn't both be here today if we ever did that. We decided to go to Thailand after our Annapurna trip.
That was a smart move.
So, massages on the beach.
Yeah, that sounds really good to me.
But I think of that time, I was in my 30s and I didn't know anything about high altitude. And I was just going to wing it. And that's what people do. So my website really talks about certain pitfalls and certain things to look out for. For example, if you want to fly out of the region, sometimes people plan their international flight the next day or two. And many times you can't fly out of the region because of the weather. So just these little tips, you know, make it so you don't have so much stress and you can really enjoy yourself. Yeah.
You seem to have adopted a young Sherpa and now as your godson.
Right.
When did that happen and how is he doing?
Well, I didn't mean for him to become my godson. I'm just not the motherly type, and everybody wants, no, be my mom. And I just wasn't that type. But when part 2 started, I returned with my friend to Everest, and on our way back, I stopped at this lodge, and there were 2 young boys, aged 12 and 13. And the 13-year-old boy, I look at him and he's in the corner, he's studying away. He wanted to be a doctor of his village. His younger brother was more, an artist, a free spirit, a jokester, fun. But this young man was very serious and responsible. And I looked at him across the room and I just had this feeling, there's something about him. Like, if he had the opportunity, he could be prime minister. There was just something about him. So, that was that. The next year when I was there at the same lodge and saw him, I had the same feeling. There's something about him. The next year when I was there, again, same feeling. There is something about him. So the fourth time, by then I had already decided to do something about it. And I started an education fund. Because up in the Coombe region, the education only goes to the 10th grade. And their father climbed Everest 5 times just to give them an education. He risked his life 5 times climbing Everest, just so these boys could go to school. And he was already, you know, older. And I remember the very first time I went to their lodge, he had just come back from Everest, and the whole family was just crowding around him in the sun because they were so happy he didn't die. It's such a hard life. And so I thought if I started this education fund, maybe they could have an opportunity that they normally wouldn't have. So I did that for 6 years, thanks to so many of you that are here that contributed and donated, because I'm just a masseuse. It's not like I have a lot of money, but every little bit counted. A student of mine would give me $5, a client of mine would give me $500. It just didn't, every single year, I always had the same amount of money. So he shared it with his brother, who is now becoming a pilot after learning to skydive. And Fura ended up being my godson down the road when I was going to base camp, and the person I always went with as a guide was not available. So I went with Fura, and then I realized, we were together a month, and I realized what I saw was what was true. He was an extraordinary person, with a good heart, helping people. He'd see somebody with a bunch of yaks with loads, load coming into the village. Didn't even know the people, and he'd run out and help unload. Or we'd be at a lodge, and he would be helping serve everybody. They thought he worked there, and he was just with me. And even walking on the trail and seeing a Mani stone, which is an engraved stone, that fell on the trail, he picked that up, put it back. He was just, what I saw the very first time, there was something about him that was really special. And today he's in New Zealand. He's married and has a young boy of his own. And last year we were in Nepal, and he and his wife had been working in New Zealand, because this is what happens in Nepal, is because there's only 2 seasons of trekking and making money, a lot of the Nepalese men go to different countries to make money, send back to the family. And so it's really common. So he and his wife are working in New Zealand while their little boy is in school with the in-laws up in the Coombe region. And just last May, they finally bought a house in Kathmandu. He brought his son down to Kathmandu because he wants him to have a good education. So he that got an education that helped him to be elected official up in the Coombe region, do search and rescue, and do all these amazing things. He saw what an education can do and how it can open doors for you. So, yeah, so he ended up on that trek that we went together. He ended up calling me. I mentioned something about how I'm his godmom, and he ended up calling me mom. And it felt good. And that was in 2017. And, yeah, and so, yeah. So really close.
Another question for you. Why the mandala? What made it the right structure or symbol for your story?
Yeah, the mandala, it's a symbol of the universe, and basically the idea that we're connected to the world around us. So a mandala, a lot of people use it for visualization or manifestation or meditation. And it's basically patterns around a focal point that basically tells a story. And when I was suffering my grief, and I was a runner at that time, my heart just felt like this, it was a black hole. And I just felt like if I went and healed that it'd be like, you know, when you're weaving a tapestry, which I used to do in the 70s, and you have all these little threads and stuff like that, and it's all scattered, and you weave together, and then you have a picture. Well, I do believe every scar, every wound, every bit of love, everything that we have is in our heart and has a picture. So it's like a mandala is like a spider web. Every little bit of that spider web is individualistic and intrinsic to itself, but it's part of the whole. So basically mandalas is you can have self-realization if you have that connection to the universe and vice versa. So the mandala just felt like something that was inside me. The accumulation of all that I went through and what it made of my heart. You know, it's hard, you can't have a compassionate heart if you haven't gone through things. If you haven't walked in another person's shoes, you can't understand sometimes. So, yeah.
With that, helping readers understand their own inner mandala, to help readers understand their own inner
Right,
mandala is really
unlike
what you're
everybody.
describing.
We've all had our
Like
own
this-
pain.
Right.
We've all had our own joy, love, loss. We all have that that's made of our heart, you know, and instead of thinking it's just something that happened, that it's really part of your story. It's part of who you are. Yeah.
You went to Everest, I think we said earlier, about base camp 8 times, and many people don't even make it there once. How was it going there, especially so many times? And the first time you went was at the age of 54, and the last time almost 67. Does
Decades
age,
ago.
yeah, does age make a difference? Happy birthday, by the way.
Well, first of all, yeah, again, I love the spirit of repetition. It's familiar. When I was a runner, I did the same trail the whole time, but I was in the now each time, so it was new. So I like that spirit of repetition, but going to base camp 8 times, every time I learned something. I learned how to adapt to altitude better, or what villages I wanted to stay in longer, or maybe a different route I wanted to take, or different things to bring. Like in those, you know, sometimes it's hard to get protein when you're up high, and I don't recommend eating the meat. So just taking my own little salmon pouches or my own little protein, you know, things like that help me instead of
Yak meat.
yeah, instead of eating the yak.
You didn't like that, did you? No.
Well, the reason I don't recommend eating the meat is the second time I went up there when I was doing Sierra's Memorial, and again I was sick, and I was stuck at this village, or this little place, this little hole in the wall that trekkers always pass by, but I was too sick to go forward, too sick to go back, so I was sort of stuck there, and that's where the porters stayed. And so I'd see them coming with their baskets of meat, and they'd put it outside in the sun, and the birds would come pick on it, flies would fly around, they'd go in and have their lunch. And at night, they would come and throw the meat on the ground, because the inside lodge floor, because it was cold. It was like refrigeration. So right then, it was like,
No yak meat. Your book depicts some of your many treks going alone, and many of your treks going alone.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them you went with your lovely husband Bennett, or other times with a friend.
Right.
Is there a preference, and how does that make a difference for you?
Well, first I want to answer the thing about age
Yes,
that you had
yes,
asked.
yes.
Sorry. Is that I believe that age does make a difference, because when you're older and you go up there, you take your time, you learn how to be safe. You probably have a lot more to lose than when you're younger and just run up there and take chances. So also you're slower, and that's a big key as far as trekking in the Himalayas, is to go slow. Or if you go slowly, your chances of adaptation are a lot better. So, yeah. So what was the question? Sorry.
Oh, it was a question about your preference of treks with friends, your husband, family. I mean, I don't know how much fun you are to go with, but so. No, yeah. Your preference when you travel, how do you feel about that?
Nothing personal, but but I like going alone. My work of shiatsu for 42 years, I'm always taking care. I'm a caretaker. So when I go to Nepal on these treks, I stepped out of my role. And if I went with a friend or my husband, I just tend to worry and want to make sure they're okay. And a lot of times with some friends, I had to plan everything and take care of everything. And when I go alone, I can just be. It's my nature to worry about others, even though they're fine. I just want them to have a great trip. And so, yeah. Even though my times with different friends that I did go up there were precious to me. In fact, one friend I went with, when I read that chapter in my book, I just have so much joy because we had so much funny stuff, just like when I went with Cassette in the 80s. We just, to this day, we laugh about things that happen. And so it's nice to share that with a friend. But if you go regularly, like I do, sometimes it's nice to just do your own thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What altitude do you fly into?
You fly into around 9,000 feet. And you're flying between two mountains, the shortest airstrip in the world. So it's the scariest flight in the world.
I thought
and when you land, everybody applaud the pilot.
Wow.
And I've done it 22 times. And each time there's that applause. There's not one time no one applauds. So, yeah, you fly into 9,000 feet, yeah.
So how many miles is the trek to base camp?
If you just go to base camp and return, it's a 70-mile trek. So it's about 35 miles to base camp.
What altitude do you end up going up to at base camp?
Well, base camp itself is 17,600 feet. But most people go to Kalapatar, which is once you get to the last village, Gorakshep, because people don't stay at base camp unless you're on an expedition. It's not where you pitch a tent. You stay at a lodge there. At that lodge is a hill it's a very just gradual hill up. It's not climbing, it's walking up 18,004 feet, and from there you see the top of Everest. Whereas when you're at base camp, you can't see the top. When you're on the ridge going to base camp, it's 3 miles to base camp from the Gorakshep. When you're on that ridge before you descend to base camp, you could see a bit of the top, but it's not until you go to Kalapatar you see the whole, So most trekkers go to Kalapatar. They don't even go to base camp. And some people, like my husband, he said, the first time I went, he's like, he saw a helicopter crash and an avalanche. He's like, let's get out of here. And I'm like, honey, I'm in love. And so some people really don't like base camp, just pile of rocks. But I could feel the energy. The whole energy of the mountain coming down the ice fall. And
Glacier.
it's just something that, I don't know where it's from. Maybe another past lifetime or something, who knows. But I just love being there, like being on the moon.
So as far as someone training for base camp, for a successful trip, do you have some secrets that you would share about that?
Yeah, in fact, on my website, ladyeverest.com, I do give a lot of hints about things like that, but definitely to try to go there as fit as you can. It still doesn't guarantee that you're not going to get altitude sickness. I mean, even climbers get altitude sickness.
Even Sherpas.
Even Sherpas get altitude sickness. So being as fit as you can helps, but it's no guarantee. But doing things like drinking the right amount of water, there's certain things you want to avoid. You don't want to get cerebral edema, pulmonary edema, high altitude sickness, and there are certain things you can take prophylactically, even certain kind of medication, like Diamox. It's a diuretic and it helps you. But the right clothing, like people don't realize that when you're trekking, even though you're in the cold weather, you're still perspiring. And when you get to your lodge, instead of hanging out and having a cup of tea, immediately go and change into dry clothes. Because you can get hypothermia very easily. So, yeah, there's things you can do to help yourself. But like I said, you could be, I used to run thinking I'm in training forever. I used to run hours and hours, but still, it all depends on following the rules of the altitude. And you're not supposed to go more than 1,000 feet per day. And if you go 2,000 feet, then you need to stay an extra day at that level to get used to it, because physiologically, you're having half the air that you're used to having. So knowing the rules and following them is a great way to come back safely and have a great time without getting sick. Even though the first 2 times I went, I did get sick. I didn't know all the stuff that I know now. And a lot of people get what they call the kumbu cough, just respiratory illness. So sometimes you're trekking and a lodge might sound like a TB ward, people coughing away all over. So because of the cold weather and just the extreme environment, it's easy to get things like respiratory illnesses.
I thought maybe the extreme environment might be in 2015 in Nepal with a mega earthquake hit. That might be extreme. You were there.
I was there. Earthquake in Nepal that killed 9,000 people, injured tens of thousands of people, left hundreds of thousands of people homeless. And the year before, I was actually in the Everest region with my husband, and I said to our guide, who's like our brother, I said, you know, when I come, I'm going to come next year by myself, but I don't want to do another life or death thing next year. Because every time I went to Everest, it was life or death to me because I took it that seriously. So we went to the Annapurna region. On our way to Annapurna base camp, we were up high, and that's when the earthquake hit. So that was an amazing feeling, because it felt to me like the earth just went off its axis. It actually felt like something big happened worldwide with our Earth, with our planet, not just Nepal. So it was terrible. And when I got out of that region, and I instantly went back to Kathmandu and was able to get a flight home. And a lot of people ran out of the mountains instantly to go home. And a lot of countries actually rescued those, you know. I met people in the earthquake that were from Malaysia, and they said, yeah, our embassy just called, they're gonna come get us and all that. But I stayed in the mountains because I didn't trust the buildings, especially in Kathmandu. Kathmandu was built, it used to be a lake, Kathmandu, and then it was just mud, and everything was built on that, and not to code. So Kathmandu, everything was pretty destroyed, but I decided to stay by the river and just wait it out a bit. And it was interesting because I met people at that time that went into the mountains, and they were all scientists studying earthquakes. There was a convention in Pokhara, a week convention, and this was a Friday. at noon. So they just were breaking for lunch, and they were gonna finish up that afternoon, and that was it. And that's when the earthquake hit. So a
Wow.
lot of them came into the mountains rather than being around the buildings that easily.
Tell them about Longtong.
Oh, yeah, we went to one region, Langtang, beautiful place. And when the earthquake hit, a landslide buried the whole village, all the people, all the cattle, all the homes, all the trekkers, everything.
Wow.
And all it was land.
It's so devastating.
It was devastating. It was really hard, yeah. Right. So that was a real big tragedy. And in my book, I talk about it more, and there's pictures that I have of the destruction. But, you know, like every tragedy, something is born from it. And now Kathmandu and Nepal, and it's so much better. A lot of aid came in. In fact, when I went up to the Everest region, and I told the doctor there, because I used to take medical supplies up to the clinics up there, and I would take a duffel bag. I didn't do anything big. And I would do it every year I'd go. And then after the earthquake, I saw him, and I said, oh, sorry, I haven't been here to bring duffel bags. And he said, after the earthquake, we had so many donations. He said, when you gave, that's when we needed it, before the earthquake. So again, it's my little saying that even the smallest thing you can do can make a big difference.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So now after the recent Gen X protest last September, with the younger generation tired of the corrupt ways of the government there, and now they have a new young leader, what is the hope for Nepal and its future generations, especially since you saw what it was like in 1980, 46 years ago? So
Well, the people are the same. They don't want to live in the dark ages. They definitely want hot water and electricity, the basics. But not only that, they want an education, not only for themselves, but for their children. They want to prosper. They want to have a good life, like we all do. And here we, you know, for us, education is our right. Over there, it's a privilege, you know? And so I saw early on in the early 1980s that people are just the same. They just want to have a good life. And I remember when the 80s, everybody wanted to have blue jeans because that was the trend, and they didn't have such things. But now that we have internet, there's a lot of people in Nepal that now are successful and are educated and well-traveled. And so this latest protest in September was from the younger generation, the Gen X, because they were sick and tired of the corrupt government doing what they were doing. And many were killed, unfortunately. They did not have to kill these young people, 72. They finally, the mayor of Kathmandu, actually, who was a rapper, a young, is now in charge. And so my hope is that they get some of these privileges that we here take for granted. And it all started with, they decided they're going to cut off the internet or Facebook or whatever they were on. And they all protested because this is how they reach all the people that they know around the world. And so to be cut off, it's just like throwing them back into the dark ages. So that's my hope for the future, is that they prosper, they get good education, it's a right and not a privilege, and that you know, they can buy their homes, raise their family, travel.
So, Kat, would you please elaborate on your personal feelings and those thoughts about destiny, and that you feel that things happen?
Well, I used to think I was a doer in my life, my hope, until I moved to Nepal the first time, and something happened to me when I went to India, and then I realized that my life is planned. We can tempt our destiny by not listening to our heart, but I resisted it because for 30 years I I'm the doer, I'm doing this is up to me, this and that. And everything changed. And ever since 1980, I've been living the way that a lot of you know me to live, where I see signs, I have things that guide me that most people might think is a little crazy, but works for me. I have a great life. And I also feel with my book, like I said, part one was just an essay. And then I would start telling my friends, oh yeah, I'm gonna write a book of of all that's happening, and my book for years. And it never left my heart. And I think when something isn't meant to be, God takes it. When it's meant to be, it stays there. And you either listen and do it or don't. So after so many years, because I knew my story was over in 2017 and ready to write about, but it didn't get published until last November. So, just my style. Yeah.
So any last thoughts you want to share about Nepal that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, Nepal, the people of Nepal are beautiful people. The country itself, a lot of people don't like the chaotic rhythm of Kathmandu, but I love it. I just sort of like the eye of a storm. It just somehow, all that chaos around makes me feel centered. Go figure. But it's just the way I am. So I encourage people, you know, you're never too old to go to Nepal. Take a little trek. You can even fly to little places like Pokhara, be at the lake. It's just such a beautiful country, beautiful surroundings, beautiful people. And, you know, I also feel that we're either helping somebody or at the receiving end of somebody helping us. It's just life. And I always encourage people when they go to Nepal, take a few little gifts or things for people, you know, or donate a little bit to their cause. And like the education fund, it wasn't my money, it was everybody's money. And you know, it's that whole saying, it takes a village. And so I feel like Nepal is a beautiful place to go if you've ever wanted to go. And I'm just so fortunate to have it as my second home. And I'll be going back, not next week, but the week after. And both my godson was coming from New Zealand, and his brother, my other godson, is coming from Canada. And I'll be interviewing them for my next book called Yak Boy, because the Inner Mandala is really my story, but Yak Boy will be theirs. Growing up in a remote village with Everest behind you, bringing in the yaks, and even my husband, tears come to his eyes when he remembers coming down the mountain with a load of yaks after taking up early to have
5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You said everyone has a book in them, or an inspiration for something to write for.
Right.
It's the thought of choosing to do so, but 20 years.
Right, you know, I'm not a writer. Never. I wrote a book before, but it's with my shiatsu work. But I saw that my book was meant to be, had its own little destiny. And when I finally, even though my story was done in 2017, finally, in 2024 is when I finished it. And that same day, I was in Kathmandu writing it. That same day, I went walking around a temple. Just felt this relief that I finally did it. And I ran into a friend from Norway who's a writer, who said, I can help you. I can turn you on to my editor, my publisher, my printer, and do that.
Yeah.
It sort of had a life of its own. And so within a year, it's ready, it's ready to buy.
Ready to buy.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank
So,
you, everybody.
thank you.
for coming. To share my story with you, and yeah, if you ever wanna go to Nepal, give me a